The ocean has always been a place of uncertainty, but for those who live and work atop the isolated platforms that extract oil from beneath its depths, uncertainty is part of the job. Every day is a careful balance between steel, machinery, and human endurance against an environment that is vast, unforgiving, and indifferent. But even in this world where storms can tear apart a rig and where fire is a constant danger, there is another threat that makes even the most seasoned crews pause. It does not come from the sea itself. It does not come from nature at all. It comes from human beings, from foreign warships appearing on the horizon, moving closer, their intent unreadable, their presence undeniable. For an oil rig crew, seeing a gray hull on the skyline is not just a curious sight. It is an intrusion into their fragile isolation, a reminder that the ocean is not empty and that the platform they stand on is not invisible. The sheer size of a military vessel closing in against the flat emptiness of the sea is enough to make even hardened workers uneasy, and it raises questions no one on the rig is trained to answer. Why are they here? What do they want? How close will they come before they decide to act? The sea amplifies every emotion. There are no distractions, no neighborhoods, no traffic, no cities, only horizon in every direction. When a warship cuts across that emptiness, the effect is magnified 100-fold. Men and women who spend months at a time living and working in solitude suddenly find themselves within sight of heavily armed vessels capable of changing their fate in seconds. In those moments, the rig transforms. It is no longer just a workplace. It feels like a target. This is not imagination. Around the world, rigs have reported encounters with naval ships, Coast Guard cutters, and patrol boats in disputed waters. Some pass harmlessly, a silent show of presence. Others draw closer, circling, broadcasting messages, or shadowing supply boats. And while most of these incidents end without violence, the crew knows that every approach is a reminder. The ocean is not only about oil, fish, and storms. It is about power. And sometimes, power sails straight toward you. On an oil rig, time stretches strangely. Minutes feel like hours, and a warship on the horizon feels like a test no one volunteered for. The crews can do nothing but wait, watch, and hope that the ship veers away. In the stillness, the rig itself seems to hold its breath. To understand why the sight of a foreign warship creates such unease on an oil rig, you have to understand what life is like out there. An offshore platform is more than just an industrial machine planted in the sea. It is a self-contained village, floating on steel legs or anchored in deep water, cut off from the world except for helicopters and supply ships that arrive at carefully scheduled intervals. For weeks or months at a time, crews live in dormitory-style quarters, work grueling 12-hour shifts, and depend on one another not only for safety, but for sanity. Every detail of their lives is dictated by isolation. The cafeteria, the gym, the recreation room all become more than amenities. They are lifelines. The same faces surround you every day. The same jokes circulate at dinner. The same machinery hums beneath your feet. In this environment, routine is survival. Predictability is comfort. The absence of the unexpected is what allows men and women to endure the loneliness of the horizon. And yet, that horizon has always carried an element of tension. From the earliest days of offshore drilling, companies and governments understood that rigs are more than workplaces. They are symbols of economic power, of energy security, of national interests. To some, they represent prosperity. To others, exploitation. And in disputed waters, they can look less like industrial facilities and more like flags planted in contested territory. That is why warships draw so much attention when they approach. The crew is not naive. They know the geopolitical landscape. They hear the news during their weeks on board. They know that a foreign navy cruising close to their platform may not simply be out for a casual sail. It might be asserting dominance, making a statement, or even conducting reconnaissance. And while the rig bristles with cranes, pipes, and helipads, it carries no defenses. It is not a fortress. It is an exposed, static structure, surrounded by nothing but water. The crew's training does not prepare them for confrontation. Their drills revolve around fire, blowouts, man-overboard rescues, and evacuation procedures. They know how to wear flame-retardant gear, how to don breathing masks, and how to lower lifeboats into a raging sea. But when a destroyer appears on the edge of visibility, or when a patrol boat circles the rig with its radar sweeping the structure, the workers find themselves in a situation for which there is no handbook. They are civilians, unarmed, responsible only for the safe extraction of oil. And yet, in those tense moments, they become witnesses to the movements of nations. It is in that fragile balance that their reactions matter most. Because when warships get too close, the rig no longer feels like a workplace at all. It feels like a front line. And on the front line, silence and waiting are the hardest burdens to carry. The sea has a way of amplifying silence. On a clear day, an oil rig crew can see dozens of miles across the water, with nothing to break the horizon but clouds and seabirds. So when a gray silhouette appears out of nowhere, cutting slowly across the waves, every eye on the platform sharpens. Word travels fast, faster than the offshore radios. It begins in the crane cap, where the operator squints and leans forward. Then it passes down to the drill deck, where workers pause mid-task to glance toward the ocean. By the time the shape takes form, a hull, an angled superstructure, a mast crowned with radar domes, the entire crew knows. A warship is out there. At first, they watch in silence. These men and women are trained to notice anomalies, to see what doesn't belong. A stray ripple in the drilling pressure, a hiss of leaking gas, a flashing light on a control board, all signs of potential danger. But the warship is something different, something that doesn't appear on any manual or schematic. Its presence triggers a primal reaction, curiosity laced with fear. Sometimes the ship keeps its distance, sailing along the edge of visibility, a gray ghost skimming the horizon. Other times, it comes closer, close enough that the sound of its engines carries faintly across the water, close enough that binoculars aren't needed to see sailors on its deck. In those moments, the oil rig feels like a stage, and the crew feels like actors being studied under a spotlight. They know they are being watched. They know they are being measured. Tension creeps into routine. A welder lowers his torch and pulls off his mask, gaze fixed on the encroaching vessel. A cook in the galley wipes his hands on his apron and steps outside, curiosity overriding the comfort of routine. The driller, usually unflappable, lingers longer at the control room window. Everyone feels it, though no one wants to be the first to name it aloud. What are they doing here? The radios crackle with speculation. Looks like a frigate, someone says. Could be foreign Coast Guard. Another voice suggests reconnaissance, or worse, intimidation. The platform supervisor, calm but visibly tense, calls for focus. Back to work, eyes on your tasks. Yet even he glances out the window again, betraying his unease. The approach of a warship does not simply disrupt the day's work. It pulls the crew into a different psychological space. Every man and woman knows that if something were to happen, if shots were fired, if a boarding party arrived, they would be helpless. The rig is massive, but it is defenseless. Its cranes are not weapons. Its lifeboats are not escape pods. Its workers are not soldiers. And yet, here they are, exposed in the open sea, confronted by a vessel designed for combat. The rising action builds not with sound, but with stillness. Every second the ship lingers is a second of uncertainty. And on the ocean, uncertainty is the most dangerous current of all. It usually begins with a change in direction. A warship that has been idling at a distance suddenly angles its bow toward the platform, its wake cutting a white scar across the sea. The crew notices instantly. Conversations falter. Tools are set down, the air thickens, as if everyone is holding the same breath. From that moment forward, the oil rig is no longer a place of work. It is a target under observation. When a warship comes within a certain range, the difference is unmistakable. The size of it fills the horizon, its presence no longer an abstract outline but a towering machine of steel and intent. Through binoculars, sailors can be seen moving on deck. Sometimes they wave, but more often they simply stand still, staring back, their own binoculars fixed on the rig. Cameras swivel, antennas rise, radar sweeps in deliberate arcs. Every gesture, every mechanical hum feels like a message. The rig supervisor calls a quick safety huddle. Radios buzz with clipped instructions. Stay alert, keep calm, no sudden actions. The workers nod, but their eyes betray their unease. What can a crew of engineers, drillers, and cooks do if an armed vessel decides to press its advantage? The platform has no defenses beyond its radio link to shore, no deterrent beyond the law of international waters, a law that feels paper-thin when a warship's shadow looms over the deck. At times like this, the Coast Guard or Navy might be notified, but response times stretch across miles of open ocean. Out here, minutes can feel like hours. The crew knows they are on their own until help arrives, and in those hours, fear is not just hypothetical, it is visceral. The sound of footsteps on steel, grating rings sharper, the clang of tools feels louder, the ocean itself seems to close in. There have been moments when warships pushed close enough that their loudspeakers barked across the water, demanding identification or asserting vague warnings. A voice, carried on distorted radio waves, can shake even the most seasoned worker. The message might be simple, you are being monitored, or this is restricted waters, but the meaning is clear, you are vulnerable. Every oil rig worker understands that the ocean is unforgiving, but when a warship hovers nearby, the danger feels man-made, deliberate. The men and women who just hours earlier were focused on drilling depths, mud weights, and safety checklists now find themselves calculating escape routes, glancing at lifeboats, wondering how fast they could launch them if the unthinkable happened. And then comes the moment of stillness. The warship sits there, engines idling, its flag snapping in the wind. The crew on deck feels every second stretch into eternity. No one dares move too quickly. No one raises their voice. It is a standoff in silence, played not with weapons but with presence. For the crew, this is the breaking point, the climax, where fear crystallizes into reality. They are face to face with power, caught in the shadow of a vessel that could, in an instant, decide their fate. And in that silence, one truth becomes undeniable. Out here, far from land, the sea is not neutral. It is contested, and they are standing at the fault line. The moment of confrontation never lasts forever. Warships, no matter how intimidating, rarely linger beyond their intended show of presence. Eventually, the engines rumble back to life, and the vessel shifts course, pulling away from the rig in a slow but deliberate retreat. For the crew, that moment is like exhaling after holding their breath for far too long. Shoulders relax, voices return, and the ordinary sounds of work cautiously resume. But the silence that remains is heavier than before, because everyone knows just how close they had been to a situation beyond their control. When the ship finally fades into the horizon, the tension doesn't simply vanish. The workers stand along the railings a little longer than necessary, watching until the last sliver of gray hull disappears from view. The ocean looks bigger again, emptier, but the psychological imprint remains. It's as if the rig itself has absorbed the encounter. The steel decks holding the echo of boots that never stepped upon them. The machinery humming beneath the shadow of a threat that has only just withdrawn. Crew leaders usually gather everyone afterward, not just to debrief the technical aspects of what happened, but to steady morale. They emphasize that the rig performed as it should, that no rash decisions were made, that communication channels were used properly, that safety procedures were respected. On the surface, it's a practical conversation, but beneath it lies a shared relief, an acknowledgement that professionalism was the only shield they had, and it was enough, at least this time. In the evenings after such incidents, the rhythm of life on the rig feels altered. Dinner in the galley is quieter, conversations shorter. The cooks notice that even the loudest personalities eat in subdued tones, their minds still replaying what might have happened had the warship decided not to turn away. Some retreat to their bunks early, lying in narrow beds, staring at the metal ceiling as the ocean rocks the platform gently. Others go out onto the deck, alone, leaning on railings and staring at the dark horizon where the ship had once been. Reflection always sets in. For many, it isn't just fear that lingers, but perspective. The rig, for all its industrial strength, is defenseless in the face of military might. The realization is sobering that their lives, their work, and the billions of dollars in machinery beneath their boots could be jeopardized by decisions made far beyond their reach. For a driller from Texas or an engineer from the Philippines, politics and naval power are not usually part of the job description. But in those moments, they are drawn into a global chess game played over the very waters they depend on. And yet, with reflection comes resilience. Oil rig workers are not strangers to risk. Every day, they contend with the possibility of accidents, fires, storms, and blowouts. The threat of foreign warships is another layer, but it does not break them. Instead, it deepens their bond, creating a shared memory that binds them as tightly as any chain on the deck. Days later, the story will be retold with wry humor. "You should have seen the size of it," someone will say. Or, "They were close enough to smell our coffee." Laughter comes easier when the danger is past, but the truth beneath the humor remains etched in their minds. Perhaps the greatest resolution is found in the way these crews continue working. They pick up their tools, run their shifts, and live by the rhythms of the sea. The warship may return tomorrow, or it may not. The crew has no control over that. What they do control is their discipline, their unity, and their refusal to let fear dictate their purpose. In that sense, the reflection is not one of despair but of clarity. The ocean will always be contested. The rigs will always stand in contested waters. And the people who work them will continue, knowing they are not just drilling for oil, but living on the front lines of invisible borders. When the warship finally fades into the distance, the rig doesn't instantly relax. Conversations restart slowly, as though everyone is waiting to see if it will return. Reports are written, details logged, and the incident is filed away, yet the unease lingers long after. Among the crew, the reflection is quieter. Over meals or night shifts, some admit they were afraid, others frustrated, but all agree on one thing: the work must continue. Oil rigs don't stop because of shadows on the horizon. In this way, the crews reveal a particular kind of strength. They don't carry weapons or wear uniforms, yet they face risks with the same discipline as soldiers. Their resilience is not loud or heroic, but steady and unshakable, the strength to keep working in the face of uncertainty. Far from land, in the quiet expanse of the ocean, an oil rig is more than just a structure. It is a fragile island of steel, alive with human endurance. When foreign warships drift too close, that fragility is laid bare. The men and women on board have no control over what happens beyond their horizon, yet they face it with vigilance and resolve. Each close encounter is a reminder: the sea is never neutral. It can be calm one hour and tense the next, shaped by forces far larger than the rig itself. And still, the work goes on. Crews return to their tasks, the rig hums back to life, and the ocean keeps its secrets. What remains is the knowledge that survival here is not just about enduring storms or machinery failures. It is about the courage to keep standing firm, even when the unknown comes sailing toward you.